ladies and gentlemen, a little bit more Seahawks time because we got to talk Seahawks football ground puck podcast with Tim Booth and Curtis Crabtree.
Very well, your team is probably going to play well. You're not always going to win, but they're going to play hard and they're going to go out there and give good performance. You can live with that.
Today we're going to talk about our next opponent.
Boys, it's back. I didn't play it last week. I should have played it last week, and I forgot to do it. Ladies and gentlemen, it's the Ground Puck Seahawks podcast with Tim Booth and Curtis Crabtree. We do it on Mondays, all brought to you by Georgetown Brewery. Tim Booth, Seattle Times. Curtis Crabtree, Fox 13. Boys, how you doing?
Good, Puck. How's it going?
No, it's going good. Curtis still, now, Curtis, the Christmas tree makes sense because we're getting closer to Christmas. So it's been a big topic here, I think, on the show. Every week, people are excited about the Christmas tree in the background. They love it. It's a fancy.
It's just a lighted tree to me. It's been up for like 4 years straight. I haven't taken it down, so it is what it is.
Yeah, okay. Tim Booth, Seattle Times. Of course, you can catch all of his work up there at Seattle Times, seattletimes.com, not only covering the Seahawks, Kraken. He's got a Storm story up there. The guy does everything. Yeah. I thought you were going to get away from the Associated Press, less work, and it feels now that you're doing more work.
No, I am probably doing a little bit less overall. I haven't. This is the beauty of having esteemed colleagues now like Ryan Divish, where I don't have to give a rip about what's going on with the Mariners at the moment, or Condota does like 9,000 things on Seahawks game days. I just have to do like one thing. So, it's still doing a little bit of everything, but overall it's been a little bit less.
All right, Tim, I'm gonna start with you, and the Curtis, I'm gonna ask you the same question. Biggest reason for the win, reasons for the win yesterday.
I thought the defense was really good. I thought they some of the things that we have talked about where is this unique system, or where are these different kind of packages or different ways to play things that Mike Macdonald was known for in Baltimore. It felt like we hadn't seen much of it yet until yesterday, and it felt like he came up with a scheme and a design yesterday that really worked. And it could be as simple as he's now got some guys in positions where they are a little bit more the fit of what they need to have, whether it's Ernest Jones, whether it's, Tyrice Knight stepping in there, whether it's maybe finally using Devon Witherspoon in kind of the way that we had all sort of expected him to be used. But I thought the defense played really well yesterday. I would give a lot of credit to Olu Oluwatimi. I thought outside of the snap, the one, bad snap, I thought he for the situation he was thrown into, I thought he played really well. And as a whole, I thought the offensive line did okay, which is an improvement over what we've been talking about for most of the season.
Yeah.
So whether it was Abe Lucas being back in there or Olu sort of like not having to step back, and in some ways probably being better than what Connor Williams has been, the offensive line was adequate enough yesterday. Maybe not in the run game, but at least in pass protection. And then Geno's final drive was, I wrote it yesterday. I think it's the best it's the best drive that he's put together in his Seahawks career. And then obviously there's some recency bias with that, but that was some special stuff we saw from the Seahawks quarterback yesterday in the last drive.
Curtis, so same question. Reason or reasons? I'm sure you got a lot to probably kind of mirror what Tim had.
Yeah, I'll give Tim everything he just said. I'll add Jason Myers hitting 250-plus yard field goals early on to keep them in the mix. To drill one from 57 there in the first half to kind of keep them within reach. That was their best defensive performance that the 49ers have seen this year. Held them to a season low in yards gain, held them to 17 points. That's not what you've seen in Seahawks 49ers matchups in recent past. That offense has really got them in a lot of ways. And basically no one did except for Juwan Jennings. Everybody else was pretty much clamped down. So it was a really strong defensive performance. To get 23 tackles out of your new starting linebacker core, yeah, I think they felt like they needed to make a change there for a reason. So they much improved. I think over half the defense was different from the starters from the last 49ers game.
Yeah.
So it's not the same unit they saw a few weeks back, and they stepped up to the table. Kobe Bryant's played really well on the back end. With everybody else back there, Devon Witherspoon obviously had his really, really solid game there. But you also have to note the fact that, the offensive line definitely looked better once Nick Bosa couldn't play anymore, which is, but you can only play who's on the other side of the field, and they were able to hold up enough for that last drive to come together. And yes, if you look at the PFF grades, Abe Lucas and Olu Oluwatimi are high up the list for the offense yesterday, which is a real positive given what you've seen. They still have their issues with the running game. It's the second straight game they've been unable to get consecutive and one yardage plays in a key spot that could potentially have won the game for them. In overtime against the Rams, and then there in the fourth quarter against San Francisco. So they have to find a way to run the football more. So it's not all on Geno offensively, but you tick that one off, it keeps them in the race, and now they're in a position where you get to win this Sunday and you're leading the division again. That's how absurd this race is right now in the NFC West.
It's amazing. I mean, last week we talked about, oh my God, if they lose this game, they'll lose the Arizona game, Tim. I'm like, hey, let's just tank for the rest of the season and get a better draft pick. And all of a sudden they win this game. They've got, they got a decent chance to beat Arizona at home. They're a 1-point dog. Early line is out. But let's say they do that. San Francisco loses. And then you've got, let's see, the Rams lose at home to the Eagles. They're in first place. It's stupid.
That's a very rosy outlook from you.
It's just
usually you're not this.
Yeah, I'm not positive. Is that what you're saying?
No, I was gonna say usually you're not this optimistic.
But that's what makes sports fun and stupid at the same time, right, Tim?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's one drive. It's one drive. It's 1 2+ minute possession that changed the entire outlook of how we view things. At least for now, moving forward, and whether they get beat Arizona on Sunday, okay, by winning in San Francisco, you have extended your opportunity to stay in this race. If you're in last place 2 games or 3 games back, whatever it would have been had they lost yesterday, it's a little different story, especially with the schedule you have coming up. But to your point, you get Arizona on Sunday. Arizona is still Arizona until it proves not to be Arizona. Like, that's just, I don't think anyone is necessarily buying the Cardinals yet, just because that's what it's the team and the franchise that we've come to know for so many years, being in this division. So yeah, you very easily could go to or wake up next Monday morning and be in first place, which is just an absurd thing to think about, considering how many issues we saw come to the surface in those 2 games before the bye, whether it was not being able to finish things off against the Rams, or is getting boat raced by the Bills, who, by the way, are actually pretty good. It's 1 2-minute drive just changed the entire course of things for this team for now.
Yeah, for now. And I would say, and a 2-minute drive and a drive to end the game, Curtis, that was just surgical from Geno. It was surgical. 1 incomplete pass, the 2 rushes, of course, the touchdown run. He was just, and that's that is at times so maddening about him, because he can look like that. And then you've got the first series in the third quarter, he throws the pick on just a horrendous decision. But that last drive was just sensational. He was in full command of that offense in that final drive.
This is why they need to help him with a running game, because everything's on his shoulders, eventually there's going to be a crack in there where you have the bad pick he has yesterday. He's not going to be able to play perfect all the time. No quarterback is. And for him to bounce back from that interception, lead the touchdown drive that they had on the Ken Walker scoring drive right after that was obviously a pretty critical bounce back for them. And then, backs against the wall, you could argue season against the wall. And they go straight down. They take the 1 sack on the drive, immediately get the scramble on the next play to get rid of that and get the first down to keep that drive going. And, 49ers gave them some extra time by throwing on that previous possession too. Kyle Shanahan and his clock management continues to be a problem for the 49ers in big spots, but Seattle took advantage of it. And ran straight down there, and with no timeouts left, Geno realizes he can take off and run for it for that final touchdown and not worry about the clock because he thinks he can get there, and if not, he can at least get the sideline. It was a really, really strong possession for Geno Smith to get that. And just to go back to what Tim was touching on there a second ago, too, like the Seahawks were on utter life support for their season. The 49ers are still the 49ers until proven otherwise, right? Well, now they're on life support. They go on the road to Green Bay and Buffalo the next couple of weeks, and they're in the bottom of the division, too. It's like their season can be teetering on a thread now as well. So, man, it's a wild sport in the NFL sometimes.
It's stupid. Tim, I'm going to go back to it's the theme of the show. It's stupid. Sports are dumb.
Yes, I heard your rant about the Cougs not making any defensive adjustments
Jesus.
before. I could very easily rant about how the NCAA Division II selection committee is a bunch of idiots for giving a team that lost 2 1-point games a number 7 seed and having them go on the road to play in middle of nowhere Colorado this next week. But anyway. That's beside the point. Sports are stupid.
Audience, he's talking about the famed Central Washington Wildcats who are on the playoffs. These two are proud graduates from Central Washington. When does the playoffs start?
Saturday. I'm pissed. We win 13-3 on Saturday, essentially clinch a playoff spot, and we actually dropped in the rankings while 2 teams above us lost. I don't know. Explain that to me.
That East Coast bias, Tim. It's that East Coast bias.
Do you? Okay, I'm gonna raise you one.
Sorry.
Do you think you should run a defense in which 3 of your linebackers are 4 yards deep on the 1 yard line? I'm just wondering. And they're gonna run the same fucking play over again and again and again and again. But yet we're not gonna make any adjustments to it. Let's just keep rolling the same defense out there.
I didn't know the Cougs were playing against Marcus Tuiasosopo on Saturday night.
Good Lord. Just all year long been dealing with that crap. All right. We got lost. Sports are dumb. The Geno drive. Curtis, I want to revisit your comments there on Shanahan because if I'm the Niners, I'm wondering what are we doing here? Why are we throwing the football? Let's try to take some more time off the clock. But Tim, this is the roller coaster, right? The roller coaster ride with Geno Smith.
Yeah, and it's something that you have to accept and sign up for. I guess it's the nature of having a quarterback who, as Curtis was mentioning, in certain moments he looks like one of the best quarterbacks in the league, hands down. I mean that drive, there's not many who are going to do it better than what he did. But you have to live with the mistakes. You have to live with the moments of and They haven't maybe popped up, it felt like, as often. I know he kind of leads the league with 11 interceptions, but it doesn't feel like all those have been on him. That one to start the third quarter was entirely on him. And that's just what you have to live with. That's the nature of who Geno is. The trade-off is you get moments like you get, they're at the end of the game. And would you have liked to see more of them so far this year? Absolutely. Would you have liked to see them be able to finish off the drive against the Rams in overtime and pick up 1 yard? And, at this point, we're talking about a team that would be leading the division. Of course you would. But it's just the nature of who he is. And there's a lot worse out there. There's a lot worse roller coasters to be riding among quarterbacks in the NFL. If you want to be puking all the time, you can just ride the roller coaster of Daniel Jones or, no disrespect to Gardner Minshew, but Gardner Minshew and what the Raiders have going on at quarterback.
Will Levis.
Name your quarterback that if you're on that roller coaster, it's just a vomit fest watching that, that guy play quarterback. With Geno, okay, you might get one of those inverted loop, things on the roller coaster once a game, but you're also going to get the fun drop into the water and everyone screams and throws their hands up like you had at the end of the game.
But
yesterday.
I also at times with him not a fan of roller coasters. I hate them, but when it starts to go up that climb, and then when we get to the top, I close my eyes. I like to close my eyes at times when watching him.
Yeah, but that's what you're going to get. I mean, that's if you don't have Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, name your elite quarterback.
Burrow.
If you don't have that guy, that's the life of being an NFL fan of your team, because you're gonna no one is, unless you're on that level, that's just the ride you're gonna have to take, and that's the ride they're gonna have to take with Geno. And to Geno's credit, he's at the upper end of that, that next tier down of like, oh shit, you're gonna get a few moments that are gonna make you cringe and close your eyes, but you're also going to get some pretty fun moments in there too.
Okay, Curtis, is it just me, or am I just being a Coug homer that I thought Abe Lucas looked really good yesterday, and I just thought that the offensive line kind of looked whole? Am I just being a homer, or did you see it the same way?
No, I mean Abe looked fine when he was in there. His PFF grades are in the 70s for both pass block, run block. Pretty solid for the first game he's played in basically a year. So there was definitely an improvement there for sure. As a whole, their running game still needs to be. It's a bottom 5 rushing offense in the NFL. They are averaging, 91.5 yards per game, which is they're 28th in the league, I think. So Geno's having to do this all to offset it, because we look at Ken Walker. I think we can all say Ken Walker's a pretty good running back. I don't think it's Ken Walker's fault that this running game isn't working. It's the fact that what's in front of him just isn't there. Mm-hmm. And so then it's putting so much on Geno's shoulders to have to do everything else. And for the most part, I think he's done pretty well this season. Obviously, yes, the pick yesterday was a bad one. He's had a couple stinky ones this year for sure. You're going to have a couple of those. And to still be able to win a game against a team that's been a thorn in your side for a long time, I mean, it's a big credit to him for sure. But as Tim was talking about with Olu playing a pretty solid game there at center, that's an improvement for them. Anthony Bradford's still an adventure at right guard, but Abe Lucas in the series he was in there seemed to be a much, much more consistent option at right tackle. And you would like to think that given a little bit more time to get up into football conditioning and playing a little bit more, that'll continue to improve. It at least gives you the path of seeing a higher ceiling from that group moving forward, which is something they desperately needed, because where they were at was just not non-functional sometimes back there. And so it was definitely a step forward for sure. Now, again, they didn't have to do it against Nick Bosa for almost half the game, which was a big deal for sure. But it's a step, it seems.
But I will say that, and I agree with you. Listen, they benefited Tim a bunch for him getting knocked out of the game. I mean, there's just no getting around it. But there was really, for me, I maybe go back and watch it again and see there was other plays that I'm missing. But I thought the times that at least Bosa was matched up on Lucas, I can only remember really one play where he kind of bull rushed him or got around him and made a play. I thought other than that, he was good against Nick Bosa.
Yeah, he was everything you would have hoped to see out of Abe Lucas. I mean, bottom line, like where your expectations needed to be based around him being out for as long as he was. You couldn't really have asked for more out of him yesterday, other than maybe being able to stay in for those couple of series that they rotated Mike Jarrell in, and you kind of did the close your eyes and pray thing. Well,
because you could see the difference right away. I think it was that first series that Jarrell came in. He either got beat or something bad happened. You're like, Jesus.
Yeah. So yeah, I thought, and even the one time that Abe did seem to get beat, it was in the first half, and that looked more like Zach Charbonnet messing up a blocking assignment than it was Abe necessarily getting beat or Bosa overpowering him on that play. That looked more like Charbonnet getting lost in space and not sure who to block and blocking nobody. So all things considered, for how long he had been out, for all the uncertainty about what was going on with his knees, I thought you had to come out yesterday very pleased with where Abe Lucas was at, and just kind of what he provided. He was really solid yesterday.
Yeah, and Curtis, you talked about Olu Oluwatimi. I mean, again, that one snap that I think I don't know. They said on the broadcast. I tend to agree with Olsen. I thought that it was a little high, but I definitely think that Geno comes up with that. Other than that, though, he didn't give up a single pressure. I don't think, right? In the game, I think those were the stats.
I saw Brady Henderson.
Yeah,
I saw Brady tweeted that he had a perfect pass block win rate in his first start of the season. So that's definitely an improvement over what they've been having here recently. So that's a step for sure. I mean, going back to when we talked to Abe at the end of last week, he was a little miffed by all the talk about his knee injury being chronic. He goes, "It's not chronic. I know that's what Pete said. It's not the issue." He's like, "It was an injury. We addressed it. It should be, fine moving forward. Not a chronic thing." So he made a point of saying that to us on Friday when we talked to him. So a good first performance for him for sure in this one, and we'll see if he can stack. To use Mike Macdonald's words, to stack that and keep moving forward.
Oh, stack and win, stack and plays. I love it. God, I love Mike Macdonald. It's cliche city with him, but it's great. Whatever, I'll take it. Curtis, did he elaborate at all about the injury?
He said it was something. It didn't happen at once. It kind of came, progressed on him to the point where it was. He didn't get into specifics for it. I think that's why it's been as quiet as it has. So I don't think he's wanted it to be talked about. So, I don't know exactly what it is or anything, so I'd just be guessing. So that's kind of what he said, was that, it's not like it was an injury that happened and you're out. It's not like a torn ACL or something, but it's something that got worse and worse and worse until couldn't do it anymore. So that's what led to the surgery last year. And he said the point of the surgery was to get to where it's not an issue again. So that's why they did it.
Tim, for both of you, Tim, I'll start with you first, though. What does a win like this do? I mean, do we especially me. I mean, we were up and down, right? A loss, the season's over. A win, God, they're going to the Super Bowl. But this was, right, Tim? I mean, early in his tenure, through 10 games of his coaching tenure with the Seahawks, that's a signature Mike Macdonald win. That's his best win since he's been the head coach of the team, and stuff like that. The way they played. I thought, I mentioned this earlier, Tim, I thought it was a very AFC North style of game, kind of minus the really running the ball effectively. But the way that, listen, these two offenses, were they both held under 300 yards, I think?
Yeah. Yep.
They had a kind of that feel to it, very slugfest type. But I wonder, can this springboard you for the rest of the season?
Absolutely. You need moments of belief. You need moments where what you're being told or what you're being shown is reinforced by what happens on the field. And yeah, the 3-0 start was great, but you look back on who you beat, and I don't know if that gave anybody that sort of steadfast belief that what we're doing is working. You beat 3 bad teams at the time to start the season. Now, obviously, the win over Denver looks a hell of a lot better now than it did.
Now.
But Bo Nix was not what we've seen from Bo Nix lately in that first game. So you need to find those moments during a season, and whether that's for Mike Macdonald to reinforce that he has guys pointed in the right direction, or he's using guys in the right way, or it's for the guys to have the belief that, hey, these coaches, can put us in the position to succeed, can use us to our best abilities in different ways on the field. You need to have those, during the course of a season, if you're going to find not only short-term success of what this season is, but then long-term success of what you're trying to build overall. I can't think of one other than maybe the Chicago game in 2012 when they won in overtime. I can't think of one in the first 2 seasons where you had that, where there was a game that stood out where the Seahawks won under Pete and you were like, yes, there's your moment of belief that this is going the right way. Hell, maybe it was the playoff win over New Orleans. But
there's a game, and I'm going to find it for you. But continue with thought.
Yeah, but you need to have those along the way, and everybody points back to that 2012 win in overtime over the Bears, where Sidney Rice got knocked silly, catching the touchdown pass. You got to have those along the way, and for Mike Macdonald and his staff and this group, yesterday should be one that they look back on throughout the rest of the season. And if they are able to build on whatever this season becomes and move forward and to move it ahead next year, that should be one they look back on and go, hey, this team was the big bad wolf that was kicking our ass for 3 straight years in the division. And we went down there and we showed we could figure out a way to, it's a massive, it can be a massive victory for them, both for what this year can end up being, but then also what might be possible for them moving forward.
There was a game that I was trying to think of the year, but it's funny because I just saw a clip of it. the other day, and someone was making this point about Macdonald looking kind of for his signature win, and what would a win mean, and how could this springboard, like what his style of play was. I thought it was in 2010, but you got to go back in 2011. They end up missing they don't go to the playoffs. They finished 7-9 that year. They end up losing their last 2 games, but God, by a combined 5 points, 2 to San Francisco and 3 to Arizona in overtime. But a game earlier that year, which a lot of people, including Carroll and others, look back on and saying, even though 2010 was great, they look at this game in 2011 against Baltimore at home, if you guys remember that. They're playing the Ravens at home. They ended up winning 22-17. They were 2-6 at the time. Everyone had written them off. They're done. They're awful. My God, did they make the right decision in Pete Carroll? And they end up beating the Ravens, who came into that game at 6-2. And Tavares Jackson played well. They ran the ball well. Lynch had like a signature play where like he juked like Ray Lewis out of his shoes.
Ray Lewis late. Yeah, I remember that.
Yep.
Yeah. So I don't know if that's this game, but there was kind of an eerily familiar game back in.
Well, if you remember right too, that was 2 games after Sherm got put into the lineup, because his first game was 2 games earlier against Cincinnati when he went up against, or his first game really as getting a lot of reps was the 2 games previous again, or 2 weeks earlier against Cincinnati and AJ Green. Absolutely. That was one where you were just starting to see the pieces of what the LOB was eventually going to become. And absolutely. That was now that I think back on it, you're right. That was probably that kind of game for that group as they used as a springboard going into to 2012.
Because they end up in the next 5 games before those last 2 games of the season, in which they easily could have won. They went 4-1. So I don't know, Curtis. This is a glass half full show today on Monday, huh? They got to run for the division, and we talk Super Bowl. How about, hey, Curtis, a reunion? Seahawks, Steelers, Super Bowl. What do you think?
Oh, well, where is it this year? Can I book a flight yet? No.
It's in New Orleans.
Okay, I haven't been there yet. Quick aside on that Cincinnati game, I was the only person to go talk to Sherm after that game, and I was the one that got the whole AJ Green's one of the most overrated receivers in the NFL quotes right after that. I was like, oh, this is who Sherm's going to be, like right off the get-go. So I remember that one very well myself. They intercepted Dalton at least a couple times in that game. I think Cam and Sherm each had one. It was a very memorable game, and that was when Tavares, with his torn pec, came back into the lineup to replace Charlie Whitehurst because he was better with a torn pec than Charlie Whitehurst. And so that's a very memorable game on a lot of reasons. But it's funny how a win can kind of go a long ways, right? Like, it's why the NFL is king, because every game means so much, and you get one win. This is a team that was 2 minutes away from a losing 6 of 7 stretch. And now they're right in the middle of the playoff hunt and can be leading the division in 7 days. So, stupid sports sometimes.
That's what I'm saying. I'm telling you, it's stupid. They're all stupid. Okay, now for a bonus $1 each of you, okay, from that game in 2011 against the Bengals that you just brought up, 34-12 was the final Bengals won. Who had the most receiving yards for Seattle that day? He had 107.
11.
If you guys get this, you'll be great. Guesses? Anyone? Bueller?
I don't have anything off the top of my head.
Nothing. Tim, anything? Top of your head. I'll give you a hint. Don't look it up. I see you looking it up. Stop it. Hold on, we lost Tim's audio.
Yeah.
Tim, you muted
There we go.
yourself.
I'm sorry. There we go.
Don't look it up.
I looked it up. I'm sorry. I know what it is.
Son of a bitch. All right, Curtis, we're going to give you a hint. Give you a hint. Iron Bowl.
Ben Obumanu?
There you go. Ben Obumanu. 107 yards that day.
Good dude. I like Ben. See him around
Good
occasionally.
guy. Yeah,
So,
I like that.
Oh, 107 yards. Unbelievable.
However, do you know where he did his master's? Funny story.
Central Washington.
Alabama.
No. That's good.
Dead
why
serious.
Not?
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you do that? What about the performance? We've talked a lot about it, but this was a fork in the road type of game, Tim, for this defense. But we talked a lot about what happened, to the offense. You got your starting center who abruptly retires. You're working in Abe Lucas, but this defense, right? You're changing linebackers left and right. The decision to cut Tyrell Robinson, and then you got Tyrice Knight who comes in there, and Knight and Jones played great yesterday. And that defense who got just manhandled in the first game up front, manhandled. Defensive line pushed around. Linebackers couldn't make plays. I think you both noted it in your stories about how there wasn't these big chunk plays that were happening in the game yesterday. Tim, I mean, it was a complete 180 how they looked in the first game.
Well, and it fed into this idea, I think, what Macdonald essentially wants to have is a defense that creates chaos by, bringing guys from different angles or places, but then ultimately doesn't want to get beat deep and doesn't want to give up the big chunk plays. And for whatever reason, they just couldn't. It could be as simple as they didn't feel like their linebackers could fill gaps and make tackles the way that they had wanted to through the first 9 games of the season. But whether it was that duo of Jones and Knight being together, or it was kind of unleashing Devon Witherspoon in the way that we had all sort of hoped and expected to see him use this year, they managed to play in that way yesterday. It was bring guys from different angles, but don't get beat over the top. And they didn't. They did a great job of keeping everything in front of them. I think it was one play over 20 yards was the one Jawan Jennings catch. That was it. That's a recipe that's good, that is sustainable, or should be sustainable. That's a recipe that you can carry over, especially if your defensive front plays as well as those guys did yesterday. And that goes back to what you were saying about how badly the defensive front got manhandled in the first game, where you had Jordan Mason and Isaac Garendo, I think is his last name.
Yeah, let's go with Garendo. Yeah, Garendo.
Yeah.
All-star.
Yeah, running all over the place against them, and just absolutely getting huge chunk plays, and that offensive line for the 49ers dominated. Yesterday, the defense, the defensive front held its own well enough to allow them to start to do some of these different things. And I thought Devon Witherspoon was great. And again, everyone thought when Macdonald came that he was going to unleash Witherspoon in the same way that he did Kyle Hamilton with the Ravens, and we hadn't seen it yet, and we finally saw some of it yesterday. And you saw just how impactful Witherspoon can be in a game.
Yeah, I mean, Curtis, he looked like that was the guy, as Tim just talked about. You talk about the guy defensively, a weapon that you can use everywhere. That was just full display yesterday for Devon Witherspoon.
Yeah, I mean, you have the tip pass interception, you have the tip pass possible interception that was up in the air, you have the rushing off the edge, that one bootleg I remember in particular where he's able to get the hand on Purdy as he gets the ball released. It's amazing what can happen when you're not in 3rd and 1 defensively all the time, like to actually being able to hold up in the early downs to where you can force some 3rd down situations where you can get a little bit creative with your rush schemes and do some different things. And yeah, as Tim mentioned, there was just the one play over 14 yards in the game yesterday that they had. So they just didn't allow explosive plays at all, made the tackles in general for the most part that they needed to make when they were there. Yeah, I mean, it was probably pretty clearly the best linebacker play game they've had of the season from those guys. And Tyrice Knight, I don't think has looked out of place in any of the starts that he's made this year. Like he maybe had a rookie moment here though, but it seems like he can live up to the playing time. And Ernest Jones has certainly leveled that position out with his addition to the team here the last couple of weeks. So definitely an improvement there. And yeah, if you can get to situations where Witherspoon can be Witherspoon and you can try these different things with them, that's a big benefit for your offense too.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it was the best tackling game that they had since the Broncos game. I remember after a while, the Broncos game was like, God, man, look at the difference in the tackling. It's unbelievable. And then it went away. Like, well, what happened to the tackling? But yesterday it wasn't that they just they tackled well. They rallied to the ball. Everyone was there. If they couldn't get one guy down, they would, there'd be another guy there to pick up. I mean, Jennings was a beast yesterday. So it was hard to bring him down because at times he was the best player on the field. But I just thought overall they tackled great.
Well, and I think.
I
Oh, go
just
ahead,
real
Ernest.
quick. I know I mentioned him earlier, but I think you have to give credit to Kobe Bryant. You have to give credit to Josh Joe. These are a
Yeah.
couple guys in the back end that have stepped in the lineup and really played pretty good football. And speaking of Bryant, he had that one tackle on Juwan Jennings where he hit him, stayed with him on a third down, forced a punt. It might have been early in the game, but yeah, both those guys have stepped in really well. And it goes to those guys that have turned over from the last game. Byron Murphy didn't play in the first game against the 49ers. Roy Robertson Harris wasn't here. Both the linebackers are changed out. Kobe Bryant at safety, Josh Jobe at corner. Tariq might have been out for that game with injury too. So like it was a very different defense than the 49ers saw a few weeks back. And they played really, really good effort yesterday.
Curtis kind of stole it, but I was going to give, Kobe, the way Kobe Bryant has played, I think allows them to feel comfortable using Devon in those different ways and kind of unleashing his aggressiveness and being able to bring him in blitz packages or have him play different spots in coverage, because Bryant's got that experience of he's played in the slot, he's played at safety. You can kind of put him in coverage sort of anywhere. And kind of what he's brought stepping into a more prominent role and playing really well now for several weeks. I think that'll help them have a little bit more confidence in giving Witherspoon the chance to be as disruptive as he was yesterday.
Now I'm going to overreact to one game, but I know it's been a topic down there with these guys, and it's something that I've talked to Mike Garafolo a lot. Just about where San Francisco is going to be at next season. I mean, they're going to have to make a franchise-changing decision. And they'll do it because they have to do it, where they're going to have to pay Brock Purdy. You can see, again, you don't want to close it because I think in this league you can get so creative with the cap and all that. But you can see their window because they haven't been able to get it done here in the last 3-4 years, right? Where they haven't brought it home. And you're doing it with a guy that's playing under like no money. Eventually when they pay him, and they will pay him in the offseason, there's going to be tough decisions to make. They'll have to. And I just wonder down there if you're not capitalizing on it, and they're running through one great team who's just knocking them off left and right there in Kansas City. But you can start to see that gap closing for him, can't you guys? To a degree. How much it's closing, I don't know, but I think you can see it, closing a little bit.
Yeah, the contract that's going to kill him isn't the Purdy contract, it's the Ayuk contract that they just did. That's the one that they're going to end up probably regretting. Because you just saw Juwan Jennings maybe be as good, better, than what Ayuk's been this year, and obviously he's out hurt now. Deebo Samuel has not been the guy he's been in the past either. And so to commit another wide receiver contract on top of, the upcoming quarterback contract to come, it's probably the Ayuk one that's going to feel like more of an albatross than anything when they get there. You can win. You can obviously win in the NFL with a big quarterback contract. A lot of teams do it. It's a bad contract you have somewhere else on the roster that ends up being the one that pulls you down. Because when you have that quarterback contract, it means you've got to be almost perfect with your other roster decisions because you've lost that margin for error, as we saw with the Seahawks coming out of the Super Bowls, where they'd given the Percy Harvin contract, the Jimmy Graham contracts, were ones that just didn't quite work out the way that they hoped to have. And, same with the Rams. Like the Rams loaded up to get their Super Bowl and then had to pay the price here a couple years ago with the year Bobby Wagner was down there when the bottom fell out on him. Trent Williams is old, didn't play, played yesterday, but was touch and go. That roster is very close to facing a reckoning because of those contract situations. And it might be a contract like Ayuk's where he now has to recover from an ACL tear. Maybe he doesn't come back to be the player he thought he was. He has been previously. It's something like that that's going to be the thing that ultimately sinks them, I think.
You probably have one more year with the Niners before they have to kind of have their come to Jesus meeting with how you're gonna manage it, because they probably don't they don't give Ayuk that contract without budgeting out what next year is all gonna look like, knowing that they're gonna have to pay Brock Purdy. But the bigger picture of where this division goes is really kind of fascinating, because yes, you probably have one more year where the Niners can sort of be the Niners before they got to do something. They either have to tear it all down and sort of rebuild with youth and rookie contracts around Purdy and the investments that they've already committed to with a handful of guys. The Rams are going to have to make a decision at some point about, is Matthew Stafford going to play forever? And then what do you do? What do you do there with your quarterback situation there? Oh, by the way, they have Puka Nacua on a rookie contract, but they're paying a lot for, at some point he's going to have to get paid. And what do you do with Cooper Kupp at that point? And Kyron Williams, what do you do with your star running back? And then you have just kind of hanging out there down in the desert, Arizona, who's kind of already gone through the tear down process because they were so bad there for several years. It's a great question about where the Niners go in the future, but I think the division as a whole, it feels very you don't feel like there's a team that necessarily has it figured out perfectly moving forward beyond really maybe next year. There's a lot of questions for all four of those teams as you move beyond, the 25 season and going forward.
I mean, it's nuts how wide open it is. I mean, it's just crazy. I mean, and Seattle's got a tough road here. I mean, listen, they're going to finish the season. I mean, it's going to be a tough one against Arizona this week. Arizona's a much better football team than they've been in the past. It's also a team, in some weird reason, why they've always played them better in Seattle than they've played them in Arizona. I don't understand that, but that's just the way that it's been. Seattle, obviously, hasn't played well at home this year. They play better on the road, but they get Arizona at home. Then they got to go to. Then they have to go to New York. They get Arizona within 2 of the next 3 weeks. They got to face Arizona, and then you come back home and against 2 teams out of the NFC that are playing good football. I mean, obviously in the Vikings and the Packers, and then you get a little bit of relief because of the way Chicago. I mean, I know Chicago looked a little bit better yesterday and should have won that game against Green Bay, but you got to go do Chicago and then in the season there with the Rams. It's just. I don't know, this year more than ever, guys, I can't figure out this team, and then I can't figure out the league. It's just, I mean, literally, it's the worst year to bet, by the way. You guys don't gamble. Stay away. If you want to bet on the NFL, you're thinking, I'm going to start here in week 11. Don't do it. Just run away. Don't do it anymore. It's miserable. That's my gambling advice to both.
Seattle needs to get, back above water before that stretch with the Vikings and Packers coming up later in there. You have to get to the plus side of 500 with this stretch against Arizona and the Jets coming up to get, give yourself a chance to obviously if those games go well, the Minnesota, Green Bay games, then you're really sitting pretty, but also to give yourself the flexibility to be able to kick one or even both of them and still stay in the race. And even if Chicago's not a great team, they're staying in games. They just can't find a way to win them.
Yeah.
So it's not like it's going to be a walkover kind of in a performance either. What's that, the day after Christmas, right? So, yeah.
Go ahead, Tim.
I would say, can we address like why the NFL schedule makers decided to give the Seahawks the entire NFC North for like 3 straight weeks at the end of December when you're like supposed to be playing your division? Like, what the hell? Like,
I didn't think about that
like,
until you just brought it up.
Packers, Vikings, Bears all in a row. Like,
yeah.
I mean, yes, they do close with the Rams, so they did get that right. So it's not quite as bad as the Mariners playing the Rockies and the Dodgers to close the season next year.
Yeah.
It's just like Central when we were in the North Central Conference and having to play Minnesota Mankato and Nebraska Omaha and schools like that and going back to the Midwest back.
Just like it, yeah.
Same thing.
Apples to apples.
Because you're right, because you get your Arizona, your divisional opponent, in 2 times in a 3-week span.
Yeah, it's a very strange way the schedule was put together this year, and then the short week having to go to Chicago the day, it's bad. It was not a very favorable schedule for them.
Last thing for you, you 2 longtime journalists, help me figure out what was the point of dropping the Deebo Samuel to Seattle story the week of. What do you think that was all about? And who's that coming from? Who's that coming from? Is that coming from Seattle?
I don't know. I'm that feels like agents. That feels like agent. Like, I think everyone knows that there are 2 things. One, I think everyone knows the Niners are going to move on from Deebo after this season. So that could be an agent trying to build up a market for him. Moving into the offseason and what his options might be. And then you couple that with whether there was legitimate smoke or not. There was obviously, consideration about whether there was going to be a move with DK.
Well,
because
that's
you're
what
going to
I
have to pay
thought
them. And so I think you just kind of someone put 2 and 2 together and said, well, the Seahawks were thinking about it in 2019 when Debo got drafted. Well, that makes total sense why Seattle would go after him this offseason. They don't have to pay DK at that, in that situation. So
it made me feel that it was coming from Seattle.
It could be. To me, it felt more agent driven, but it could be. It could be coming from the Seahawks.
I could see a circumstance where it comes from the Seahawks side too, wanting to say like, well, we would have taken Debo as well because we knew he was going to be great. But I truly don't know. I didn't even read the story because I read the headline. I was like, that's strange. Also, who cares? And like, I was just kind of like, I don't get the point of it. So,
there's always a point though. That's the thing. You know this. I mean, they use these guys all the time. Yeah.
I felt like I got that with the headline that somebody was trying to get it out there. So like, I didn't feel like I needed any particulars on it. Like, I didn't actually read it. I was just like, okay. And like, if they do draft Debo first, are we sure they actually go through with drafting DK? Like, there's so many,
or they don't get him. I mean, they had to wait. It was another 30 odd picks, right?
Well, did they trade back up into the end of the second round to get him? Is that what it was too? Right? Yeah. So so I don't know if they have Debo already in their pocket. Do they do that? I don't know. Maybe at that point you trade Tyler and jump on. There's probably a way to have done it if that circumstance came on. I just don't know. I guess I said I'm struggling to figure out what the point of that was.
Hey Tim, in your unofficial state rankings, how far did we drop again? The Cougs.
I think I dropped you guys to 3. I had you guys tied with Whitworth because Whitworth.
Oh, they got hammered though.
They got hammered by Linfield. Yeah, but Whitworth got a home playoff game, even though they got hammered by Linfield. But Central wins, and they don't get a home playoff game. Stupid NCAA. Jesus.
All right, what's the early? Where can I find a line on the Central game? Central's playing. Remind me.
They're playing Western Colorado, who's the same team they beat, the same team they played in the first round of the playoffs last year. Which I even have a bigger rant about this. So you go to Bill Conley from ESPN, who does like his power rankings kind of things. He ranks every team in college football. Every team in college football, no matter the division. So he's got FCS teams ranked higher than a bunch of FBS teams, whatever. Okay. He has Division 2 is worked in there. The 219th ranked team in the country for him, based on his analytic power rankings, is Western Colorado. The 220th ranked team in the country is Central Washington. What the hell? What are we doing, NCAA? You have the same matchup as last year in the first round, and you did it again, and you didn't have to do it again. I don't get fired up about stuff like this very often.
No, I can tell.
Pissed me off.
Yeah. Do we have an early line on the game?
Probably Western Colorado by a touchdown. I don't know.
Where do you watch this? I was thinking about both of you this weekend when I was honestly when I saw your tweet that came out where the bracket, and I'm honestly, when you watch, I don't know how much you watch Central games during the year, like regular season, where do you find it?
So there is a funny that you asked. So I actually went to, I guess I only made one game this year, but there's a company called Flow Sports who is a streaming broadcaster that they have a partnership with the Lone Star Conference, which is where Central plays, and you can stream all their games and watch them. And funny enough, the game on Saturday against Western Oregon was their free game. You didn't have to pay for it. You just watch it. So I watched the game a big chunk of the game on YouTube while I was covering the Kraken game on Saturday.
Better or worse than the CW?
Ooh, good question. Probably better, or I mean worse, just because the CW has a couple more cameras. Than what this group has.
Do they have the ump camera, the middle referee camera?
No, they don't have that at the D2 level. They don't quite have that one.
All right, there he is, Tim Booth, Seattle Times. Go read all of his work up at seattletimes.com. Follow him on Twitter. The handle?
By Tim Booth.
Easy peasy by Tim Booth. Curtis Crabtree, Fox 13. All of his work is up there. You can read it there. You can also find him on the TV. He does the Washington Sports Rep. When's your next appearance on there? By the way, the other day you looked great.
Scheduled.
Huh?
I don't have one scheduled, so free and clear for the time being. But Curtis _ Crabtree on Twitter / the other place is called now. So
it was a great quarter zip or something you had on. It was just you looked
just
sharp.
a swetter zip thing. Yeah,
it's sharp, sir. All right, boys. We're not going to talk to you next week. Thanksgiving week we're gonna take it off. Little R&R.
I'm disappointed. I was looking forward to jumping on from the Honda Center in Anaheim, where I'll be next Monday. But no, I get it.
Why you're in the Honda Center?
The Kraken are on the road next week, so
okay, so going with the Kraken. All right, so we'll give you guys the week off. We'll see you back on December 2nd. Thanks, boys. Have a great and happy Thanksgiving.
Thanks, guys. Have a great Thanksgiving, Puck.
Yep, you as well. There he is. There they are, I should say. Tim Booth and Curtis Crabtree. We do it every Monday, the Ground Puck Seahawks podcast. It's available up on YouTube. Go there. And when you're there on YouTube to go watch it later, please like and subscribe and leave a comment. Also up on Apple, Spotify, wherever you find your podcast. And, of course, we put everything up at pucksports.com.